manager at PCUK. So pancreatic cancer is the fastest killing and deadliest common cancer. People die within 3 months of half of people die within 3 months of diagnosis.
And I'm Lauren, and I'm a campaigns officer at Cancer Research UK. So we're the world's largest cancer charity and a member of One Cancer Voice. And we had the pleasure of working together a couple months ago to deliver a petition with over 60 other charities and almost 80,000 supporters to the Prime Minister.
So yeah, today we're going to give an overview of how we did this, like how we brought 60 charities together in this coalition to deliver a petition and to deliver it very quickly, at speed, within just 4 weeks. Also, we'll look at our hand-in activity, how we got the coalition on board and kept them there, the curveballs that we had thrown at us from government, and also all the setup of the petition and the data management side, working with all those charities to create something that everybody was happy with. And then we'll cover off the impact and learnings. So starting off with some context, take you back to February 2022. The then Health Secretary announced that there would be a national war on cancer. This is for England. So they launched a consultation for a 10-year cancer plan that they said would be ambitious and long-term. And the cancer sector and One Cancer Voice celebrated this, welcomed it, and really got to work responding to that call for evidence and then supporting over 2,000 people affected by cancer to respond to that as well. We came together as well as a coalition to respond. So the One Cancer Voice coalition, as you can see, is a strong coalition over the whole of the UK with over 60 charities. We tend to work mainly on public affairs influencing, so creating joint responses to consultations, issuing joint press releases, and sort of developing manifestos ahead of elections so that we can basically come together and show the one position that cancer has in it to enable us to achieve better cut through. As I'm sure you're aware, that's how coalitions tend to be most impactful. So we responded to the initial calls for evidence with 10 tests for what we wanted to see in the cancer plan. But then unfortunately, over the next year, we really saw very little progress. And we felt that a year later, on the anniversary of World Cancer Day, we should make some more noise about this and come together as a coalition again. And we decided that we would launch a petition targeting the the PM with an open letter. And I think this was the first public campaign where we wanted to mobilise all of our supporters across the UK that we'd done as a coalition. So here is our aim: to hold the government to account on its cancer plan through a strong display of sector unity. So as I mentioned, it was really important to move quickly, and we did this as a coalition by establishing a working group. We had an offshoot of the main coalition of 6 charities of varying size. So it consisted of Blood Cancer UK, Brain Tumour Research, CR UK, Lymphoma Action, Pancreatic Cancer UK, and Macmillan. And all of these organisations went away and sought agreement from their organisations that they'd be able to dedicate resource to this campaign. So CR UK, Lauren in particular, had more resource as a charity to dedicate to this, the coordination. So they took on the bulk of the logistics, developing the petition, etc. But other members were able to take on quite meaningful chunks of the organising of all the activity. So we, as a coalition, developed this broad call to action, which you can see on this slide, and we quickly had 50 of the charities signing up to support the action. But then, unfortunately, there was a government U-turn, and there was a decision to scrap this 10-year plan and replace it with a major condition strategy that would cover several long-term conditions. So cancer was no longer going to have its own plan, and our supporters were frustrated and angry at this, that they wouldn't have their own plan. So we decided we would still need to continue with the petition to hold the government to account. We pivoted quite quickly within a couple of days to tweak our calls to action. And because we hadn't changed a lot of the surrounding information in our call to action and our letter to the Prime Minister, it was easy to get others and sort of keep others on board by simply asking them to let us know if they didn't want to still be involved. But yeah, everybody stayed on board with us. Now I'm going to hand over to Lauren to talk about some of the details.
So I'm going to dive a bit more into the petition itself. So to summarize the political context, basically the government had promised a 10-year strategy for cancer. A year had passed, nothing had happened, and then they kind of offered a 5-year major conditions strategy, which incorporated a lot of different conditions, just not only cancer. And so we wanted to make sure that this was a very strong strategy, and we felt like our petition was definitely still relevant. And we used this petition to appeal to the Prime Minister on those 2 calls to action that Joe shared before. And I think this is really best summarized by this excerpt from the petition. So we all came together around a common cause that all of these charities could unite by. So 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their lifetime, and it will likely affect everybody in the UK. People affected by cancer feel frustrated, they feel let down, and this is our opportunity, the Prime Minister's opportunity, the government's opportunity to take action for these people affected by cancer and build a better future for them. So this was language that was agreed upon by all coalition members, and it's a letter, and it outlines the political situations, the consequences of inaction, and the solutions that we're proposing. And in the end, we got over 76,000 signatures, and this was all done without paid promotion. We really used the power of coalition work. A lot of email lists, a lot of sharing on social, a lot of person-to-person sharing. As Joe touched on in the beginning, we did have a few bumps in the road when it came to ethical data storage, and I think that's something that maybe a lot of people identify with when it comes to coalition work, and I'm going to touch on that in more detail in the next slide. But this letter was hosted on Engaging Networks, and we put all of our logos at the bottom, and then we invited members of the public to join us by adding their own names. Oh, nice. Okay. So this is a screenshot of me building the petition on the back end. So even though Cancer Research was building the petition, this was very much a coalition effort, and we wanted to make it really clear that it was not a Cancer Research petition. But that being said, One Cancer Voice is technically not a legal entity and therefore cannot keep people's data. So we consulted our legal team, and they advised that we say this is a One Cancer Voice petition hosted by Cancer Research. So this is what we did on the petition page itself and in all the language that we used to promote it. So the coalition came together, and we put together a creative brief to disseminate to members. So this had sample email templates, had sample social posts, some graphics, and case studies, and people use this to promote the petition itself. And all this language advertised it as a One Cancer Voice petition, in brackets, hosted by Cancer Research, and that allowed us to collect people's data ethically and advise them on who was storing it. So we took this kind of graphic branding of a wanted poster. So it says, wanted, an ambitious, long-term, and fully funded strategy for cancer. The reward is improved outcomes for people affected by cancer, and then it goes into the letter itself. We have some coded templates as a charity, but we improved upon these and built our own that was using the coalition colors and the coalition branding. And it had both the logos, Cancer Research, and the coalition's logos. Cool. So this is kind of the blown up petition promotion. So we sent everybody in the coalition these graphics that they could use on social, that they could put on their web pages, and that they could include in emails. And what we decided as a coalition when working with people's data is that we would collect their data, advise them on where it was being stored, and then delete it afterwards. And this was painful to do. It must be done for legal reasons, but it meant that we couldn't use the data for supporter journeys, and we couldn't go back to those people afterwards. But what we did was we gave everybody in the coalition who requested them trackable links. So we did keep track of who was turning in what numbers, and we could report those back to the charity so they could go to their audiences and say, 2,000 of you signed a petition, thank you. And it was also really good of us to acknowledge what sources were bringing in the data. So I think I remember correctly, 52,000 of the signatures came from email. So that really speaks to the power of email when it comes to collecting petition signatures. But also, the remaining numbers came from social shares and person-to-person sharing. So both are very important. One of the things that helped us effectively share the petition link was these case studies on the left. So we went out to coalition members and we asked them to ask their supporters for stories to help support our petition. These are two different supporters of two different charities. So the top is Becky. She is a supporter of Pancreatic Cancer UK, a pancreatic cancer survivor. The bottom is Uzma, who was a campaigner for brain tumor research, whose husband passed away from glioblastoma. So a lot of stories like this came in, and we put them into a branded template to help people post on social media. And then after we closed the petition, so the petition was open for 4 weeks, and then we allotted 2 weeks to help clean the data, which turned out to be much a more complicated feat than we thought it would be. There were a lot of duplicates. I think one petition signer signed it 7 times. So we had to make sure there weren't duplicates. I think the original number was about 80,000, and at the end it was just over 76,000. So it took about 2 weeks to do that. But still at the end, after no paid promotion and only being open for 4 weeks, we had more than 76,000 petition signatures. And we wanted to make a big splash when we handed in those signatures, and we decided to have a hand-in event on the lawn outside of Parliament. And we invited coalition members to choose 2 to 3 representatives from their charity to come for a photo opportunity and then a march to number 10. So about 80 representatives ended up coming to the hand-in event. Would have been cool if there were 80,000. And we asked them to wear t-shirts from their charities, and this ended up making some really cool photos. So this photo on the right is a photo of supporters with Steve Brine, who was having a difficult political day that day. But it was fine. But yeah, so the pictures actually ended up looking really cool because everybody is wearing these t-shirts from their charities that they're supporting, and this really marked an unprecedented moment of unity for cancer charities in the sector. We invited photographers, videographers, volunteers, and MPs to come down and take photos and give case studies. And one of the downsides of having to delete everybody's data was that we couldn't collect stories, and the petition didn't kind of have that personal angle that often our petition campaigns have. But by bringing photographers and videographers, we were able to get some really powerful case studies of people at the event. And at the end, I'm going to show you a video of some people being interviewed. And it's really touching. But then we had a photo op, and then we all marched down to 10 Downing to hand in the petition. So this box on the right is all the petition signatures printed out on copy paper, and we hand-delivered that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. And just covering some of our impacts. So as Lauren mentioned, I think the biggest impact was really that huge sense of sector unity on the day, and there was a real buzz that everyone felt during the day. And it was just really great to have our supporters up front and centre of the activity and handing in that petition to Downing Street. And you can see there's a quote from Uzma there. We also had that cut through with national press. One of our aims was to show that sector unity and demand that government took action, and I think having that national press and that visibility was really helpful for that. And also we were able to get cut through at the Health and Select Committee with Steve Brine mentioning, giving a name check to the petition there. In terms of what happens next, we are actually still chasing for a response for the petition. There's a call for evidence which is still live for the major condition strategy that all of the coalition charities are being encouraged to respond to. And we've also got quite a big plan and strategy around how we keep up that momentum as we move into the general election and to make sure we've got that united front again going into that. Thanks. And just to cover off our learnings, so that, especially in the short time frame we had, that regular working group meeting was really important, and it was important to know that different charities had different levels of resources, different levels of different types of expertise and different resources, and to kind of make sure you're making the most of that resource that you have. We kept our policy calls broad, which enabled us to pivot quite quickly and also enabled other charities to sort of paint their own picture kind of underneath the top line of that petition as well. We found that organisations responded really well to having tools given to them to promote the campaign. So as we mentioned, the social media templates, but also the briefings, template copy, etc. As Laura mentioned, you have to become a bit of an expert in handling data for these things, and there was a bit of a steep learning curve there. So if you're doing something similar, it's about just factoring all that in pretty early on. Oh, what happened there? and then finally, it would have been a good idea for us to have considered those next steps of what happens next after the petition hand-in, because really that campaign should have been the starting point for that campaign. But because it's a coalition piece of work, everybody really had to go back to their own priorities, and sometimes that momentum can be lost if you don't sort of make sure you're thinking about how you're going to capitalise on that earlier on. So yeah, finally, we're going to show you that lovely video.
Yeah, we're going to play a short video of the hand-in event and a kind of summary of our efforts, and then we'll take a few questions afterwards.
We are One Cancer Voice.
I'm Ian, I'm Exec Director for Policy at Cancer Research UK, and I'm here to support One Cancer Voice in delivering our petition to number 10. Times are really tough for cancer patients right now, and the cancer waiting times are the longest on record, which is why One Cancer Voice, speaking with a really clear, loud message that we need the government to commit to investment in prevention, world-class research, diagnosis and care for everyone. And that's why today we're calling on Rishi Sunak to make cancer care a priority and to give cancer patients what they deserve.
It is so important that all these cancer charities come together and make a very loud noise about what the future of cancer must be.
From my experience, having lost my husband to glioblastoma, a fatal terminal brain cancer, I've seen no change in the last 11 years at least.
We're going to do a march to number 10.
I'm not going to touch it.
Do you want mine?
Oh, it's the button. Okay, now it works. That was amazing, really, really inspiring, like on so many levels. I've got some questions here that were added to the Slido app. What process allowed you to agree on the language used with so many organizations taking part in the coalition? There's a bit of a theme here.
Okay.
I mean, you know, when you try to route copy just in one organization, it's pretty tough. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do when there's that many?
Yeah, so it started with, I think, just writing one of us wrote a draft, and then it was shared with members of the steering group and the working group. And it just we used a Google Docs so that it wasn't a platform which was shared just within one organisation. Like anybody could go in and make suggestions and comments. And basically, it happened like that, and comments were incorporated. It evolved over time, and
Was
then
there one person
eventually-
managing the whole thing?
No, it was quite collaborative because PC UK actually wrote the initial draft, and then it was looked at by the whizzes at CR UK and sort of tried to sharpen it up. But I think we had an initial conversation about the kind of big points we wanted to bring out in the letter initially. So points around the number of people affected, the number of supporters being let down by this. So we had a kind of a general agreement to start with about like what the tone and the big stats, I guess, we wanted to bring out. And then we kind of built it on that and took it from there.
Yeah, I think it helps that there was already a relationship established. So we weren't making a coalition from scratch. We already had frequent conversations. And then it also is important to add, it's good to have a working group and a steering group. So even if you do have lots of people working together, that you have some people who are quote unquote in charge and able to kind of direct things.
Yeah, and on that, we did actually have our response that we'd written the year earlier to the 10-year plan consultation. So we took some of the previously agreed stuff from there as well.
Nice. Okay, another question. Did you track how many times the petition was shared on Facebook and other social media channels? Any data on that?
We didn't track how many times it was shared, but we did track the amount of signatures that we got from Facebook and Twitter and different social sources. So we, in addition to every charity having their own tracked links, we also created different social shared tracked links. So there was many tracked links.
The other theme that keeps coming up, I see a lot of questions here. The one that I'm looking at here, it says, how difficult or easy was it to coordinate between so many different organizations? But like, were there moments when it felt like there's no way this is possible, or I mean, you're making it seem like it was easy.
Well, when we had our wash-up, there was a lot of feedback that the working group, just the regular meetings and just the upbeat, positive and can-do attitude of that group and people being prepared to put themselves forward to take on big chunks of the work made it work. So, for example, Macmillan and their public affairs team drafted the templates to get MPs along, for example. So...
Oh, that was cool.
I think the only bit of slight disagreement we had was around the tweaked calls to action, because you'll notice it went from one, because it was very easy, the first call to action that we had, it was basically publish the plan. And then it became a little bit more complicated because there was a bit of a difference of opinion as whether we should still be calling for a long-term plan or whether that whether that was unfeasible and we should basically call for the major condition strategy to focus on cancer. But in the end, it ended up being a bit of a compromise and we had both in there. So I suppose that was the one that we had the most back and forth over, and then the eventual agreement on what you saw.
Nice. All right, a few more questions. Did you have an ask of any sort on the thank you page of the petition, and did it work well? Yeah.
Yeah, so we used kind of an auto-scroll journey for the petition, and it only had 2, and the other one was an ask to share. But Cancer Research is running a petition right now where it asks to share, and then it asks you why you shared. And that, even though we didn't do it for that, I think that has also been really successful and something I would suggest.
All right, we only have 1 minute left, right? Is that right? Yeah, and then there's a break. But this question, I think, I love this. This is an example of what a lot of organizations working in the same sector should maybe be thinking about doing, because coalitions are very powerful. So the question here is, do you think more charities should collaborate if they have a similar objective?
Yes.
That was the answer I wanted.
I think so. I think not one of us alone could have had the impact that we had with this coalition. And that was expressed a lot of times, not only by people working in the charities, but by members of parliament and stakeholders to the issue. So I think yeah, you're always more powerful together.
And also, I think by having a single call to action rather than the 60 different calls to action, you're far more likely to get cut through if you're able to agree on a few key things every 6 months or so, especially like running up to an election. Cancer, for example, is only one of many other issues. And if you've got 60 different charities just talking about different issues within cancer, then that's why we're coming together to create that manifesto to say these are our, I don't know, it'd be amazing if it ended up being 3 calls, but it'd probably be something like 10. But that's, I think, politicians like that, ministers like that, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we didn't use any paid promotion for this petition, so it meant that it wasn't an extra burden on people's budgets, especially smaller charities. So even though it was taking some time out of people's day, it wasn't a financial burden for the charities, so I think that's an extra added bonus.
Fantastic. Round of applause. Thank you so much.